All right, so since I wasn't able to do much content for today, but why should we appreciate what Jim Harbaugh brought to the 49ers? Because before Jim Harbaugh came in as a head coach, we were going through the Dennis Erickson times, we were going through the Mike Nolan days, we were going through the Mike Singletaries, but Mike Singletary eventually became the foundation, and then as soon as we let him go, Jim Harbaugh started to get a lot of this talent. You know, we had some good talent, but it was just the coaching staff just wasn't all there. You know, it wasn't like building for that team to win. So it wasn't like they had a winning culture for that talent. So, you know, we had one of the best GMs at the time called Scott McCloughan. That guy was a draft genius. He got talent and we made the most out of him. But the coaching staff was trash. The management was just not all there, man. Like the Yorks just didn't give a shit. But then as soon as they started to make changes, you started figuring, because all those 8 years of losing after 2002, it was frustrating to be a 49ers fan. We went through the tough times when 2004, like 2004 was the worst time to be a 49ers fan, which is 2-14. Two of our games were won in overtime against the Cardinals, which I remember to this day. It was embarrassing, but that was part of the hard times of being a 49ers fan, was when you had a guy like Tim Rattay at quarterback, and Ken Dorsey, yes, the Bills offensive coordinator, was our quarterback back then, if people didn't know about that. Then you had a Cody Pickett at quarterback. You had guys like Curtis Conway, who was at the end of his career, wasn't the same player, but he was at the end of his career just collecting a paycheck and playing. You had guys like Arnaz Battle. You had guys like Brandon Lloyd. But you had some guys who were trying their hardest to play. They were trying to make some film to stick around. You had guys like Mark Roman out there. You had, there was just a lot of guys. Like Kevin Barlow was putting his heart out there at one point. But then you had a lot of those guys come around. They were trying to build a team, but you had some talent back then. You had Julian Peterson, who was really the most gifted player of his era. And I don't think there's nobody even close to the same caliber talent that he was. He was a rare talent. And we wasted his career with a losing organization. He had maybe a couple of good years with us because we had two playoff type of caliber teams. Because in 2002, I think that was pretty much his best winning season as a total, because he never got to witness the winning success with us, because we had guys like Andre Carter, Brian Young. They were coming at the end of their careers, and as soon as we started to go young and build different directions, we started to get guys like Justin Smith, who came from the Cincinnati Bengals. We started taking chances with guys who weren't given the fair chance, like Ahmad Brooks. We got him off waivers because he was coming off a supplemental draft from the Bengals, and we turned this guy into a household name, and he became one of the most physical presence of our defense. You had him as one of those guys that nobody wasn't sure about. We developed a guy like Deshaun Golston, who became one of the most physical presence of our secondary. Then we pick up a guy from Buffalo named Dante Whitner, who became a difference maker and create fear on this defense. You had guys like Ray McDonald. You had Isaac Sapoga, who were just good against the run. Very disruptive in their own rights. But you had some linebackers, bro. You had a guy like Navarro Bowman, who was up and coming. He was into his second year and coming into his own. But then you had one of the best linebackers in the league. Patrick Willis, one of the most generational talents. This guy was at a high level. You had guys like Mike Upati, who was a Pro Bowl. This guy was dominant, bro. This guy was dominant at the position, bro. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler with the Niners, bro. This guy was consistent. He got the job done. You had a guy like Joe Staley at his prime doing it, bro. You had a guy who had talent like Michael Crabtree, bro. This guy would make catches. This guy was consistent at times. You had a damn good tight end that was athletic, ran a 4.3 speed, bro. This guy was built like fucking insane receiver, bro. But he was a tight end with that type of speed, bro. He was a tight end with receiver speed, and it just was a mismatch. You had to figure out a way to stop this guy. But then you look at the facts that the Niners were just a young team, but they just needed a coach that could just motivate them, bring the best out of them. But then when they started to bring in Jim Harbaugh just churned the culture. But you had guys like Frank Gore, who was the heart and soul of that offense. Frank Gore carried that team when it wasn't even at their best. It was the worst times as a 49ers fan, but Frank Gore put his heart out there, and he wanted to have a winning season for once in his career, and he got that with Jim Harbaugh. Alex Smith, for whatever reason, for his career was like in some ways not so good, because he was considered labeled as a bust, a draft bust, because his career was whatever it was. But as soon as Jim Harbaugh came around, Alex Smith's career went from like becoming a really good game managing quarterback. Nobody ever talked about how he used to throw a lot of picks back then. Now they're talking about how he was a little bit mistake-free now, because under Jim Harbaugh, he turned that dude's career around. Under Andy Reid, he just been great. He's been good going over there. But in all perspectively, we built that foundation. That 2011 draft pick, those 2011 draft picks were like difference makers. You got guys like Aldon Smith. You drafted Colin Kaepernick. The guy eventually becomes that type of guy that takes this offense to the next level. And we do this read option stuff. No defense couldn't figure out how to stop it. It took them a couple of years to figure out how to stop this guy. And then you draft a cornerback from South Carolina named Chris Colliver. He was a solid starter. You had some good contributors then too. You had some good players. There was a lot of good talent in that draft class. You had a lot of good players there. Then you had Colin Jones, who was our special team safety. I mean, you had some really good talent. You had some really solid talent. You had Kendall Hunter in the 4th round, that running back. Man, we had a good one right there. Then we had one, I think we drafted one of the linebackers in the 5th round, I believe, or O-line. No, it was Daniel Kilgore. We drafted at center, but he eventually was the guy that replaced Jonathan Goodwin. So Goodwin was like the center, like he was a good center too. He was a Pro Bowl center for the Jets or the Saints. I think no, he was a Pro Bowl for the Saints. But he was a really solid starter, and he solidified the foundation. We had some guys that were kind of like turned their careers around and got opportunities. Like Alex Boone, in his first year coming into the league, he was a little out of shape. He wasn't all in the right mind of commitment. And then as soon as he started getting serious about his football conditioning and all the other stuff, this guy became one of the most underrated guards in NFL history. He was like the tallest guard in football. I think he was like 6'7", 300 like freaking pounds. That dude was fucking gigantic. They call him the Rhino. But what made this team so interesting was the way we built that defense under Vic Fangio, bro. Vic Fangio brought a defense on a 3-4 defense that was just scary. When you saw the way that defense was built under under Vic Fangio, bro, it was a physical intimidation, bro. We came to hit you. We came to knock your ass out. We came to take the ball away from you. We came to fucking not take no for an answer from you. We were gonna not give you much yards. We weren't going to give you some touchdowns. Like, we went into the season, like, in 2011 with 14 games without a rushing touchdown, which is still an NFL record. But that defense was built to fucking stop really good football teams. We beat the Saints, the number one offense in the NFL. Drew Brees, one of the top quarterbacks in the league. He had the most passing yards. He had the insane stats, but the Niners beat them in a shootout in the playoffs. And then we go into the We go into the NFC Championship game against the Giants, and we lost. But the point was, that was when we knew we needed to come back into the next season. And then this is when the team turned it around. And then Alex Smith eventually got injured, like midway to the season, and then Kaepernick came into play, and the game was tied against the Rams. But then on Monday Night Football, Kaepernick makes his debut, and he puts on a good show. And Jim Harbaugh was questioned about when Alex Smith returns, is he going to start Alex Smith? And Jim Harbaugh put it like this, like, it's quarterback controversial. He wanted to go with the hot hand, and he stuck with the hot hand. And then ever since then, that team was building momentum. That team was building up hot. And then when they came into the playoffs, they just destroyed the Packers. They were just a hot team late in the season. They were just peaking at the right time. They went into the NFC Championship game against the Falcons and won in a 17-point deficit, and they get into the Super Bowl. And then it's just one of those stories, this team was built to win a Super Bowl, but the clock management was a problem, the penalties, the lack of officiating was bogus. There was a lot of missed calls, but I'm not bitter by that shit. I'm just speaking it like it is. But when you saw how that team was built, they were built with adversity, but in some ways we kind of felt screwed by that fucking Super Bowl. But why should we appreciate the 2012 Niners? It kind of gave us some hope. It gave us some excitement. Like, that team was built with adversity. That team was built to win something, and we just couldn't get it done. But it gave us a bright future. We thought we were going to build on with Jim Harbaugh, but a couple years later, he was gone. And that's what really killed it. But it took 5 more years until we started to get something special. But that's the point about why we've got to appreciate what Jim Harbaugh has done for the Niners. He brought that team to bigger heights than it's never been. Because those 8 years of losing, it was frustrating as Niners fans, but when he took over this team, he took that team to the next level. Not even Steve Mariucci can even top that. But even then, that's just what we were missing, and that's why we got to appreciate it. I just like the way how Jim Harbaugh brought that energy, man. He was a little cocky. He had a good personality, but that dude knew how to relate to the players because he played the position. Everybody wanted to get through a brick wall with this guy. Everybody just loved his attitude, bro. This guy was like Charlie Sheen, bro. This guy was cool, bro. Everybody fucking liked that dude. I can't say so much for Kyle, but he knows how to win too. But Jim Harbaugh just knew how to push those buttons, and Jim Harbaugh knew how to fucking get the best out of you. He knew what would work and not work, but he would know how to win at any cost. So that's why we got to appreciate Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh was just a controversial guy, but he was somebody you would like, bro. He was a rah-rah guy. He was a guy that just fired you up, and he can relate to the players. That's what's so great about him. But that's pretty much my reason why we should appreciate him. But if you like what I said, make sure to hit that sub and hit the subscription, hit the like, and I'll definitely keep you guys posted. But as always, go Niners.